The subject of lost media is one that fascinates many people, and for good reason. In today's wacky, crazy digital age, everything is backed up on USBs, private servers, and archives, from 2000s flash games to deleted YouTube videos to government files and everything in between. My point is, no matter how obscure, you can probably dig it up on the World Wide Web, for better or for worse. This accessibility makes lost media all the more mysterious and alluring. Despite all the tools at our disposal and despite hundreds of people working tirelessly to find them, there are some recordings, films, and documents that will never see the light of day. It's incredibly rare that a piece of lost media ever gets released to the public, which is what makes today's story so bizarre. The Day the Clown Cried is an incredibly rare piece of lost media which has been lost for nearly 50 years and will be released in 2024. Today we're talking about the controversial and disturbing film and the story behind its bizarre disappearance and eventual re-emergence. The Day the Clown Cried is a Swedish-French drama film made in 1972 by director and actor Jerry Lewis. Yeah, that Jerry Lewis. And if you're like 13 and don't know who Jerry Lewis is, I'm sorry that you didn't understand the reference. I will try to insert some Fortnite jokes later. Lewis had been acting at the Olympia Theatre when he was approached by producer Nat Waxberger with an offer to direct and star in a mysterious film with complete financial backing from his studio. Lewis was incredibly reluctant at first, stating that he was wrong for the part and the idea of acting in it, quote, scared the hell out of him. So why did the seasoned and experienced actor have so many reservations about the script and its subject matter? Well, The Day the Clown Cried is a drama film which follows a circus clown who becomes imprisoned in a Nazi concentration camp. So you know, I understand his reservations. Despite this, Lewis ended up accepting the role and thus the infamous film was born. Though the full film is completely inaccessible to the public, several snippets have been leaked on YouTube taken from multiple sources, including a documentary about the production of the film and some behind the scenes clips. I've seen sources claim that a 30-minute clip of the full movie was leaked to YouTube in 2016, but this video and all of its copies are now either privated or taken down by YouTube. Either way, hopefully the footage in the background will give you some sort of indication of the film's tone and general quality. To understand the mystery and controversy behind this film, we first have to dive into its dark and disturbing plot. The Day the Clown Cried follows a German man named Helmut Dork, and his misfortune doesn't stop at just being named Helmut Dork. Helmut is a washed-up circus clown who once toured with the Ringling Brothers as a famous performer, but is now looked down on and disrespected by all who meet him. It's clear that he used to be a talented performer, but is now past his prime and is clumsy and bad at acting. After he trips another clown during a show, he is demoted by the circus owner and later fully fired. He then goes to a bar where he drunkenly mocks Adolf Hitler and rants about Germany, leading to his arrest by the Gestapo. He is subsequently imprisoned in a Nazi concentration camp for political prisoners, where he spends the next 3 to 4 years awaiting a trial to plead his case. The rest of the movie follows his life in the concentration camp. He tries to maintain his status at the camp by bragging about his past fame, and he only has one friend, a kind-hearted German man named Johann Keltner. Helmut doesn't realize that his acting skills are bad, and after a miserable performance, the other prisoners all shun him, and one even kicks him while he's cowering on the ground. After this attack, he sees a group of Jewish children on the other side of the camp laughing at his performance. Helmut continues to visit the children and perform for them, delighted to be appreciated again, and he begins to grow an audience. The guards command Helmut to stop, as fraternizing with the Jewish prisoners is strictly forbidden. However, he continues to perform for them, unwilling to leave the children in a state of unhappiness and likely also unable to give up the feeling of being loved and appreciated again. The movie comes to a head when the guards break up one of his performances and kill his friend Johann. After being placed in solitary confinement, the guards promise that his case will be reviewed if he helps to load Jewish children onto the trains. By, quote, a twist of fate, he ends up traveling with the children on the train to Auschwitz-Birkenau, where he plays games and sings to them to calm them down. When a child asks the clown if he has children, he responds, "I do now." When they arrive at the camp, Helmut is used in, quote, Pied Piper fashion to lead the children into the gas chambers, as they trust him and will follow him without question. Helmut asks to spend the last few moments with them on the way to the showers and prays for a miracle. This miracle, however, does not come, and the film ends in dramatic fashion with Helmut donning the clown makeup to lead the children into the gas chambers for one last performance. The Day the Clown Cried was a movie that was doomed from the start, and not just for its disturbing premise. And don't worry, we'll get to that later. Filmed in Sweden in 1972, the production was incredibly fraught. Film equipment frequently got delivered late or went missing, the money ran out halfway through filming, and Jerry Lewis had developed a severe Percodan addiction. Meanwhile, there was no sign of Nat Waxberger or his money on set. And Waxberger was a huge reason why the film would go on to become a piece of lost media. I never thought I'd say this, but the situation was summed up well by a Reddit user who wrote, Joan O'Brien and Charles Denton come up with a script concerning a clown who ends up in a concentration camp. Their script is optioned by Nat Waxberger. When Jerry Lewis gets involved with the project, he makes massive alterations to the script, including ones that make his character far more sympathetic than the original script. Waxberger fails to make his full financial commitment to O'Brien and Denton, and his option expires. When Lewis tries to secure permission, he fails because O'Brien and Denton object heavily to the film that he made. Essentially, Waxberger made a lot of empty promises and completely failed as a producer, never following up on his promises of full funding and studio support. Usually, when a producer gains the option to a film, they are then in charge of that film and its distribution. After Nat's option ran out, that responsibility went back to the writers, who would have never allowed the film to be released to the public. After all, in their eyes, it was a huge bastardization of their work, changing the story from the redemption of a cruel man to a quote Chaplin-esque dark comedy. And having read the script myself, I wouldn't want it to come within 50 feet of the word comedy, especially if my name was on it. So through a combination of Nat's ineptitude, Jerry's script rewrite, and the huge number of copyright issues, the movie was forbidden to be released. Keep in mind that the lack of proper funding also played a huge part. Many have pointed out that a lot of the clips from this movie are raw and unedited with poor sound and production quality. This is likely either due to the tight budget or the fact that the movie never got to the post-production stage. Either way, the shoddy quality was just one of several reasons why this film became so widely hated. So here's the big question. Is the movie a harsh and gritty look at the Holocaust ahead of its time, or a low quality, tasteless mess? Well, that's up to personal interpretation, but most agree that it's a little of the first and a lot of the latter. The Day the Clown Cried was one of the first ever films about the Holocaust, and was the first film to explicitly depict a concentration camp. In this way, the film was pretty ahead of its time in an age where the brutality of World War II wasn't as comfortably depicted as it is nowadays. And don't get it twisted, not everyone hated this film. For GQ magazine, Amy Wallace wrote, Jerry Lewis was mercilessly criticized for attempting to mix comedy with the ultimate tragedy. However, in 1999, when Roberto Benigni's Life is Beautiful won 3 Oscars for a similar storyline, many noted that Lewis had tried it first. Famous filmmaker Jean-Luc Godard commented that it was a beautiful idea and that Jerry Lewis should be supported in his efforts. Cinema historian Jean-Michel Frodon wrote, it's a very interesting and important film. Very daring about both the issue, which is of course the Holocaust, but even beyond that as a story of a man who has dedicated his life to making people laugh and is questioning what it is to make people laugh. I think it is a very bitter film and a disturbing film, and that is why it was so brutally dismissed by those people who saw it, or elements of it, including the writers of the script. And the two Jeans are right. The film was daring and pretty groundbreaking for its time. Unfortunately, groundbreaking depictions of war does not a good movie make. The movie is incredibly famous, or rather infamous, for being one of the worst films ever made. It's been criticized as tasteless, cruel, disturbing, and unwatchably bad, not just for its disturbing plot, but for the visual quality, acting, script, and general tone. One of the only people in the world to have ever seen the full film was Harry Shearer, of all people, who plays like 80% of the cast on The Simpsons. Shearer has spoken extensively about his disdain for the film.
Now how bad is it?
Well, you know, if you say Jerry Lewis clown in a concentration camp, and you make that movie up in your head,
right,
it's so much better than that.
Is it?
By better, I mean worse.
Do you sit and laugh at it, or is it so?
You're stunned. You're just, oh my God?
Really?
You've got to be, oh no!
And it's understandable why people hate this film without even seeing it. The premise of a clown at a Nazi death camp is ridiculous, and not in a subversive and darkly comedic way, but in an oh my god, you tried to be pretentious and deep, but this is just plain silly, why did you think you could ever pull this off kind of way. With scenes depicting the children crying for their parents, being mistreated, and eventually led into gas chambers, I don't understand why on earth they thought they could put a dark comedy spin on it. The movie was both overly graphic and overly sugar-coated, somehow glossing over much of the brutality of the camps while also over-dramatizing other aspects for shock value. Many have actually criticized this film as being an early example of Oscar bait with its over-dramatized performances, on-the-nose message, and confronting subject matter. Comedian David Cross from Alvin and the Chipmunks commented that Jerry Lewis was, quote, too ahead of his time. If he had waited 25 years, then he'd be bounding over those seats grabbing his Oscar. And while people who have read the script and seen snippets of the movie tend to criticize it, no one hates it more than the people who helped make it. The original screenwriters hated the film so much that they forbid its release, and Jerry Lewis himself hated the film most of all. Quote, you will never see it. No one will ever see it because I am embarrassed at the poor work. As far as discussing the movie, forget it. If you want to see any of the movie, forget it. In terms of that film, I was embarrassed. I was ashamed of the work, and I was grateful that I had the power to contain it all and never let anyone see it. It was bad, bad, bad. Clown's infamy has grown so large that it now has to be either better than Citizen Kane or the worst piece of shit that anyone ever loaded onto the projector. As we get closer to 2024, the fantasy of seeing this horrifically botched Oscar bait is steadily becoming reality. Even so, things aren't quite as clear-cut as they may seem. Many people claim that the full film will be released in 2024, but this isn't quite the case. Lewis only handed in a rough cut of the film, 13 cans of partial negatives, so around 90 minutes of film. This film may also be unedited and missing sound, and a decent chunk is believed to just be behind-the-scenes clips. So will we ever be able to watch The Day the Clown Cried? I'm sorry to have misled you a little, but the answer is most likely no. Even if the Library of Congress chooses to make the rough cut public, it won't be the full film and may just be a rough collection of unedited clips. It's not even known where the original full film is, and for all we know, it could be permanently locked up or destroyed. With all parties involved in the film now dead, it seems like a bad movie night viewing of The Day the Clown Cried will remain just a dream. But as lost media detectives online know, it's important to hold out hope. We've already found so much material from this lost film, and the 2024 release may just be one more piece of the puzzle and one step closer to unearthing one of the most controversial and disturbing films out there. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I really hope that you enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye!